Who do we have online? All right, we'll go ahead and call the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority Board meeting to order. I'm Jordan Tusher. I'm a co-chair of this board. We have our other co-chair, Lowry Snow, online, as well as other board members in person or online. I appreciate all the people who are joining us in person and virtually, and excited to get this kicked off. As you can see, we're meeting in a new room here. We're just getting used to some of the technology and the way that this functions. But this room, room 445 of the state capitol, we expect this to be our new meeting room moving forward.
And I will remember that next time. I'm around for 15 minutes.
No worries. Mayor Ramsey finally found the right room, and we're
to find out where I was supposed to be. And in the process, I was afraid I was going to miss my only opportunity to be to an inland or to be to a point meeting on time. But I made it.
You made it. That's great. Well, well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Senator. So this will be our meeting room for the future. So hopefully those that are going to attend in person, you'll know where to go. We've got a full agenda today, so we'll get things kicked off. We look forward to receiving several progress updates from our executive director and consultants. In our last meeting, the board approved and authorized the co-chairs and Director Ambre to finalize negotiations for a proposed sub-campus application that was submitted by our private sector development partners, the Point Partners. The proposed project includes a state-of-the-art 100,000 square foot event venue that would be constructed adjacent to the promenade in phase one of the development. Since then, our staff and board have been actively working to finalize and advance the project. We've also sworn in and welcomed the members of our newly reorganized board as established by Senate Bill 166, which reduced the board from 12 to 7 members. And to get things kicked off today, we would be remiss if we did not properly recognize our former board members for their dedicated service to this project on behalf of their constituents and residents of the state of Utah. Now, trying to work through the various schedules and agendas of different board members, we'll probably be doing this over the next few board meetings to get everyone recognized. But we do have and have invited Representative Ariel DeFay here today to join us, and would ask her to come up, if you would, to the front of the dais. As some of you know, when during the demolition of the Draper prison site, we preserved some of these sandstone pieces from the prison entrance, which we understand came all the way from the Sugar House prison when it moved down to the state that's at the point now. So these pieces were cut up and then embedded in an acrylic plaque that we're presenting to Representative DeFay today. So we hope that this serves as a reminder of the great service that you had on the board for such a long time. Senator Stevenson, I think, acutely recognized that I think Representative DeFay was probably the shortest tenured member of this board, but nonetheless, we are very appreciative of the service that you did.
And that was worth the one.
So thank you so much. Thanks for your service. Here, do you want to get in here? Should we get the group? What do you want us to go around, or why don't we go around? That would be better. On this side. Thanks again. All right. Well, thanks again, Representative. And as I said, we'll probably be doing this a few times over the next few months to get all of the board members properly recognized for their service. All right. Well, moving on to the third item on our agenda. The point is a public project. As a board, we have a responsibility to ensure that this project reflects public values and provides broad public benefits. And we really value the input from residents and always welcome public comments following the procedures that are outlined on the agenda. So this would be that time for any members of the public that wish to be recognized and share any comments that they have on the project, either in person or online. So if you are online, if you would raise your virtual hand, and if you're in the room, if you'd raise your actual hand, let's see if there's anyone here that would like to make comment. I don't see anyone in the room. Is there anyone online? No one online. All right, well, we'll go ahead and close public comment then and move to the fourth item on our agenda, and that is the minutes of the March 18th, 2025 board meeting. The board packet contained these minutes, and I hope everyone's had the chance to review the minutes as prepared by CC. I would recognize a motion. Let's go to Senator Stevenson.
Yeah, I would move that we approve our previous board minutes or the meeting from our previous meeting.
Thank you for that motion. That motion is in order. Is there a second? Second from Mayor Walker. So is there any discussion to the motion to approve the minutes for our March 18th, 2025 board meeting? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and place the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Rule that passes unanimously. All right, we'll now recognize our good Director of Operations, Don Willey, who will present our financial update. We definitely recognize the trust that has been placed in us to ensure that the Land Authority funds are appropriated and spent in a manner consistent with our approved budget, and also appreciate the work of our Finance Committee, April Cooper, and our Director, who review our financial statements and ensure they're in accordance with the board approved budget. So if I could recognize Don now to go through the March 2025 financials.
Good morning, Chair Tusher. Appreciate the opportunity to join virtually. I'm in the Everglades, so thank you for allowing me to share this from a little further away than normal.
Is it a little more humid there?
Much more humid, yes. It's spring break, right? Well, again, I thank you for the opportunity to review our financials. I want to recognize again our Finance Committee and their support in ensuring that we are utilizing taxpayer dollars and maximizing it on this project. I'm pleased to report that we are, as we have been throughout the entire year, still on track to be under budget. We appreciate the budget adjustments that the board approved in our last meeting. This just allows us to ensure that as we slide into home plate, that we are still on track. Again, we did not make any changes to the overall budget line, but individual lines that kept the same total amount of the budget. And so everything still remains in a great spot. As we look here on the far right column, you'll see our remaining budget target at this point. We're in the third quarter of the fiscal year. So we should be with 25% of our budget remaining in this as we enter the last quarter here in April. We are at 65% budget remaining. We do have some larger items that will come in. So in our last meeting, we talked about some utility invoices that we had not paid previously. DFCM had paid for those previously. So this year we will see, and probably on our next financial report, you'll see that number change. But even with that $230,000 invoice that we expect coming in, we'll still be well on track to be under budget in this fiscal year. We are, it is showing a higher burn rate in a few categories. I'll just review those quickly. So first, in the exhibits, displays, and awards, we invested, of course, in the award that was presented today to our board member, former board member. And so we have those for this transition and moving forward as well. So an upfront cost that we invested in this year that we'll be able to utilize for multiple years. And then We talked about this in our last meeting as well, the data processing charges. This is our bill from the state of Utah. And so we are burning high on that, but we, as mentioned last time, we are anticipating a refund for some overages in those charges. And so by the end of the year, we should hit close to 0% on that, right? We should be right on target to meet our goals there. Aside from that, we are doing well above that 25% mark in every other category. Yeah, I'm pleased to provide the report.
Awesome. Thank you for that excellent report. Let me turn some time over to Director Ambre or April if you'd like to add anything. April, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dawn, for preparing the financials. I do a review of the financials every month and a quick cursory audit, and everything looks appropriate. The bulk of our expenses, the majority of our expenses are personnel. We know that's for like Mike and Dawn, and also some consultants. All the other budget line items are pretty small in relation to our total budget, but everything is appropriate, and I have been reviewing it every month, so I think they're doing a good job.
Awesome. Thank you, April. Director?
The only thing I wanted to add is it's about this time of year where Don and myself will sit down and really map out the coming year's budget. And, like Don mentioned, we do have a couple of utility expenses that were unforeseen that DFCM did cover in the past. So we need to make sure we capture those. I would also suggest that we entertain maybe hiring a part-time admin assistant at this point. There is a significant workload going on right now with 3 people. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention is our allocation never contemplated any type of pay increases or to keep up with salaries. So might want to think about that moving forward as well.
Okay. So you'll come back with some proposals next month.
Yeah, Don and I will sit down and go through it.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. To the board, any discussion to the budget? Not seeing any. All right. Thank you. All right. We have a motion to approve the March 2025 financials. Second.
I would second.
Second from Senator Stevenson. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, I'll place the motion. All those in favor of approving the March 2025 financials, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say
Aye.
nay. Rule that passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move to the 6th item on our agenda, and that is Resolution 2025-002, Phase 1 Disposition and Development Agreement Amendments. And we'd like to invite Director Ambre to present these proposed amendments to the board for consideration. So I'll turn the time over to him.
Thanks, Coach Tusher. So I'll give a high-level overview of this. We call it the DDA amendment. You should all be very familiar with this. We've presented on it probably 3 times in the past. And this was all part of, well, there's some cleanup here for one thing, and then this also addresses the entertainment venue within PID 1. And I'll start there. So this basically allows the developer to impose a fee to retailers in the space that would be one of the revenue sources for PID 1 or the entertainment venue. So that's one. The other one is, we talked about a management company that would come in and collect money to manage landscaping, snow plow, general maintenance, those types of things. When we started thinking through this, we needed a map to really demonstrate where this would happen. And that became a little problematic because this is a little bit organic. So the question then became, do we want to go with something more traditional like CC&Rs? I looped in Co-Chair Lowry. We had a discussion, internal discussion, also looped in our developer partner TPP. And we decided that CC&Rs are the right approach. So this just basically says that we will impose CC&Rs and we will come back to the board when those have been established for approval. Another line item within this amendment is public art. As you probably recall, in our original DDA, we meant to have some kind of capture of funds to support a public art program. It was overlooked, and this is basically capturing 0.5% of the overall hard costs or construction budget per project, per takedown that would go into a public art program. And then the last item that is maybe of significance is just our cooperation in obtaining liquor licenses for our partner with the local jurisdiction. And those are the kind of highlights of the amendment.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation. We'll go to the board for any discussion or motion. Go ahead, Mayor.
Just pertaining to the liquor license, the way you mentioned it, those come from the state. After a certificate of occupancy and a business license have been issued, then the liquor license comes, I believe, from the state. Is that right?
That's correct, but they do have to have an application through the city first, right? But then, yeah, and that's how the statute's written now.
Okay,
And so we're basically suggesting that we are helping our developer partner through that process with the city.
okay, I understand. This is very fresh for me. I just went through this right now. So I thought, wait a second, it's okay. As long as that's what it is, but it will still go to the state to approve, which I realize
Yeah,
is
then it
unique. This is a
goes
state
in-
project, but it's,
Correct. It goes in front of the commission, I believe, right? And then they have ultimate say.
Great,
whether
okay.
they issue a
okay,
license.
thank you.
Mayor, you never want to be fresh when you're dealing with alcohol,
Oh,
okay?
You can tell by my voice, I'm not very fresh. Last night was
The
fun and
same.
I am tired.
Senator.
Just to comment on the public art piece. You know, we've looked at, as we've gone through this process, we've looked at a monument or some type of a large demonstration point for art that would, a landmark, if you will. The more I look at the building that has been presented, and I don't know if that's the way that will be built for the Convergence Hall. I don't know that, well, maybe we ought to be looking at a kind of a combination effort here with those and make that building the monument. It's totally amazing. I mean, we look at what was at least presented, maybe that's a concept, I don't know, but I do believe that we could structure that in a way that maybe we could get away from some of this, the pinnacle that we were looking at before, or the Eiffel Tower, or whatever it is. And maybe look at a combination there that may, number one, save us some money, and number two, maybe become much more of an icon for that area than we would perceive otherwise. So that's just a suggestion or an idea.
No,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. And maybe you can clarify when we talk about this 0.5% for public art. That's not necessarily for a grand
No.
art project. This is
No.
more just little art throughout the community.
Right, yeah, we've created a pretty extensive art program. We'll put together an art board and we'll commission pieces of art throughout the site is what we're thinking on this.
You know, that's really impressive from coming from a guy whose last big project was a prison.
It was a beautiful prison.
No comment.
That's great. Well, and I understand too, that the renderings that we've seen from Convergence Hall, that's not just a concept. I mean, that's what they really spec'd out and believe that they have the funding now to be able to move
That's
forward.
really
with.
quite amazing. And maybe there's some way we could, if we look at the icon that we were looking at creating, maybe we do some combination there, and that becomes the icon.
I think that's the hope. You know, our team has been, brainstorming about this a little bit, and we certainly want to keep in mind scale, right? Something that might be appropriate in this community. So we're thinking through that process quite a bit.
Well, don't look at that as an idea for me. Just look at it as a backup to your plan.
All right, Chair Snow, did you have a comment or discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a comment at this time, but I would like when it's time, and perhaps after others have given a chance to make a comment, I would like to propose a motion. Thank you.
I have one other comment just to float out there. Draper City has an arts council that exists already that does this. Goes through the vetting process for public art pieces around the city. Just an idea, maybe incorporating them into whatever this arts board is that you want to look like, however that looks. But there's a public made up of members of the public that live in that city arts council that already exists. And so figuring out maybe some quasi way to either have them do it or include them in it.
Sure.
I would dare say they'd probably really like to be included in it as my guess.
Let me ask this question really quick on that. It's probably merits a longer discussion, but I envision this really similar to South Jordan has an arts council, right? Daybreak has its own.
That's why I'm bringing this
art
up.
council.
I have a lot of experience with this.
So,
And
so
it's
what
really
is,
the only place that these two quasi things kind of exist.
how do they interact today in South Jordan?
South Jordan Arts Council is who oversees art projects. Daybreak started their own arts council. They're quasi, they don't get any money from the city. They work to come up with some HOA, and they have some projects in the development specifically. But not exclusively, because Daybreak is a really nice neighborhood in South Jordan City. So our arts council, made up of folks that live in Daybreak and don't live in Daybreak, who all live in South Jordan, oversee most of the art projects. But there is an arts council that has a small role that they've created too in Daybreak. And so that's what made me think of it. I was like, you know what, if there are people who live at the Point or will be part of the Point, and people who are not, who are residents of Draper City outside of the Point, bringing them together as an arts council, that already exists. Maybe we don't have to reinvent that wheel and just have all those folks who are doing that, passionate about it. They've been vetted about, they're an arts council. Anyway, at least incorporating them into it.
Does the HOA arts fee, which is pretty similar, like 0.5% that goes to fund art within the community, does some of that money go back to the South Jordan Arts Council?
No,
It's all
Daybreak
managed by the
Arts Council uses that money, but they don't get any of the city's money to do specific in that neighborhood. But we own so much property in Daybreak. The city of South Jordan owns so much property in Daybreak that we still do a lot of public art projects in Daybreak because it's part of our city. Yeah,
Interesting.
it's unique. And so this is unique, and which is why I just brought up, figure out a balance there with the Draper Arts Council too.
Great,
Yeah.
great suggestion.
I don't see any other comments or questions. Let's go back to Chair Snow for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My motion would be that we approve the item that is before us, the amendment to the development agreement has been discussed. And may I speak to it briefly, Mr. Chair?
Please.
I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this is a significant milestone. And it has taken a lot of time of staff and our legal counsel and working with the developers to get to this point. And I just want to thank our director and our legal counsel and everyone and other staff, Nick and Don, who've worked on this. It's good work. It's necessary, and it's a great step forward. So with that, I would hope that we can get this matter approved with my motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. So if I can restate your motion, I believe it's to approve the resolution 2025-002, which then outlines approving the amendment that's been proposed. So
Thank you.
is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mayor Ramsey with the second. Any discussion of the motion?
Just one. I just want to point out, I was not suggesting that any of this 0.5% go back into a citywide art fund at all. It stays in the project. I'm just saying, might be a good idea, both because we've got arts people, probably. I say we, it's not me, but Draper has arts people, and also for community support and buy-in and creating a place where folks who already live there feel like they're also part of this new development. I think that might be a benefit. I just wanted to clarify that. And with that, I have nothing else on this motion.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Not seeing any other discussion, so I'll place the motion. All those in favor of approving resolution 2025-002, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. I'll rule that passes unanimously. Thank you. Congratulations. Great work, staff and council on that. We'll move to item 7 on the agenda. This is the Point Public Arts Master Plan presentation. So in October of 2023, following a competitive and transparent RFP selection process, the Land Authority awarded its public art master plan contract to Designing Local and locally based Union Creative. So following an 18-month process of detailed work between Design Local, the Point staff, Point partners, and other partners, we have received the Point Public Art Master Plan, and we've invited Designing Local to present this plan to the board. So I'll turn some time over to Amanda Golden. She's the managing principal of Designing Local, and Jasmine Metcalf, from the project lead, to present, and then we'll facilitate discussion. So go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you, Jordan. I want to apologize on behalf of Amanda for her absence today. An urgent matter came up and she had every intention of being here, but fortunately for you guys, I'll be representing the both of us. So hopefully we can cover everything thoroughly, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have regarding the plan. So where we've kind of gotten to at this point, knowing that some things are still kind of up in the air with funding based on the last agenda items discussion, and what we were able to accomplish as part of this is still a really thorough implementation focused public art master plan. I want to talk about this plan in a couple of kind of parallels. You have your broader plan strategy. That's your stakeholder vision, which we've had stakeholders from across the state weigh in on conversations through focus groups about what types of public art typologies they wanted to see, what types of themes they wanted the collection to be representative of, both local and from a world view, what they wanted that to say more broadly to people who visited Utah and visited the site, different placement strategies that they would think would bring an experiential value to this development. And then any other kind of points that they wanted us to look out for, like creating opportunities for local artists and for artist development, and also perhaps bringing in some international artists that are kind of here to shape the Utah arts landscape. So we folded all of those considerations into the strategy that we've developed for this public art plan. And then the other parallel this kind of operates on is your public art policy. This is your policy language, which isn't always the most fun to read, but it's really important for stewarding a good program. So regardless of how funding really works out, there's still some things that, as Mayor Don Ramsey mentioned, that you want to have in place, like your roles and responsibilities and what type of board you have advising on public art, what that board makeup is, how you accept donations, and what types of considerations do you need to take into consideration before accepting a donation. Maintenance, deaccession of works, whether at the end of their lifespan or for another reason, a public art program work plan, which is inside of this strategy. That's the more incremental step in process in bringing public art to fruition within the site. And then how funds may be used, how artists might be selected, and how you might run a mural program. So all of those things are included in the public art policy as part of this plan. If you have any questions on how those things really function, I'm happy to answer that at the end of this, but I would like to talk a little bit about the experience that we're trying to create as part of this, this program. So we heard from stakeholders that they really wanted this to be a welcoming and approachable experience. They wanted artwork that was interactive, awe-inspiring, fun, bold, and really fit in with this new kind of future forward thinking development. They did want to see things that felt like they have a connection to place and a connection to Utah. So whether that's highlighting like unique geographical features or cultural stories within Utah more broadly connecting to shared history, shared values, those types of things. Community oriented. So there was a lot of conversation about this being accessible for families. A big benefit about a public art program is public art in public spaces for everyone to experience. So it's a free thing that when you enter the public realm and you see this like great sculpture, it's something that anyone can access and anyone can interact with. They also wanted it to be sustainable and accessible and fit in with existing practices and initiatives statewide and continue to be future forward thinking and also surprising and experimental. So this would add a new dynamic to this development's overall experience. Some stories and themes that people brought up. So whether Indigenous history and the people that were here before, Utah beehives and what that symbolically means about the community and about the state and the uniqueness in that. Across almost every single focus group, Jello salad came up in an interesting way. And people spoke to it about being this kind of symbol of Utah's uniqueness and unique culture that they wanted to play a role. So people weren't really asking to like have a Jello salad artwork, but really that the artwork would kind of meld together and be this kind of collection of stories and experiences that are kind of unique and special to Utah. Prehistory and discovery, so dinosaurs, those types of things. Connecting to Utah's past and future Olympic legacy was a big topic. Utah's pioneer history and heritage, and seagulls were another thing that came up. So just talking about these like shared stories, shared values that are very prevalent across the state. When it came to public art typologies, broadly, people were really supportive of sculpture, things that were very dynamic, interactive, functional, wayfinding. All of the public art typologies that we would typically see as part of a program are defined as part of this document. So whether you're releasing a call for art that was like fairly well spoken about in stakeholder interviews, which we know murals and sculptures and those types of things are always spoken about, but maybe you want to bring something in that's diversifying the collection or bringing a new dynamic in, and it's maybe something you don't have yet in the collection as we're thinking towards the future. It gives you some definitions around what those types of artworks usually entail, so that can be folded into calls for art in the future. So we present definitions for temporary and pop-up art, textiles, functional art like wayfinding, transit stops, lighting, mosaics, interactive lighted installations, all of those things. And then another thing that we do as part of the plan, beyond just defining what your general artwork opportunities might be, like trails, transit pieces, wayfinding functional, murals, we also identify these experience defining moments and ways in which those might be funded and prioritized to really create a dynamic experience that's happening all over the site. We prioritize spaces that were likely to see a lot of pedestrian traffic, and so that it was more human scale oriented. And so spaces like the River to Range, the Promenade, the Central Green, Chapel Trail, and then some additional opportunities here and there. So this graphic kind of guides what that experience should look like site over site. Beginning with because this is a highly programmed space, we were really thinking and ideating about this as being one central kind of beacon piece. So likely to be sculpture, site specific, or interactive. The three examples on the bottom give you a kind of an idea of what that might be. Like Mark Fornis's Zephyr, which can also in some of his artworks function as like an amphitheater or a shade pavilion or something of that nature. It fits in well with these park spaces because although it takes up space and it has some scale, it still has some function to it that allows you to work with it within your programming. And then also on the far right down here, Janet Eckelman's Pulse. So this is again something that pedestrians can move over. It has some scale to it, but it's working within the site and it's extremely site specific. When the transportation system passes, the fog goes up, the lights move, and it's really dynamic and really interesting. And we get a lot of stakeholders who request something like this that has that connection to the site. When it comes to the promenade, we were thinking of pieces that were a little bit more integrated within the urban fabric. So on the bottom right here, this is a work by Camille Walala. It's very fun, vibrant, but functional. So it's really creating this site identity in this space. It's acting as functional elements like benches and planters and these banner systems. And it's something that can bring a really fun pop of color, pop of art into these urban spaces. The promenade is also a prime opportunity for the mural program to operate within. And then we also know that there's this idea for these different rooms within the promenade that have some themes behind them. So this is another great opportunity for some site-specific works that are speaking to each of those themes. So we have Cloud Arbor here on the left, which is representative of clouds. You've got the fog, you have this very like sky forward piece, and you can see it's very thematic of that natural element and that natural experience. And we feel like that type of example is a great idea of how an artist can work to conceptualize something within these rooms that feels like it fits. When it comes to the river to range, we were thinking of things that were a little bit smaller scale, a little bit more intimate and dispersed like a trail system. So you might also see functional elements like this art nest here in the middle that's acting as a pavilion or maybe some type of shade space within different elements. You might have some things that are applied to the facade of the bridges that cross through, like the Porter Rockwell Bridge that crosses over the site and can give you some kind of either screening or a different effect that's shielding the pedestrian experience from the traffic. And then also a lot of lighted installations could be really appropriate in an environment like this because it's going to provide some night interest. It can be thematic of nature, of organic, you know, shapes, elements, those types of things. And so this is called Royal Rice Field, and it's floating within a small like collective reservoir, and it lights up at night, and it's just really fun and dynamic. The last big site that we're really talking about is the Chapel Trail, which is running perpendicular to the river to range. So this is kind of a moment to be a little bit more reflective, we feel. When we're looking at these pieces that are examples here, it's not necessarily to say that we're thinking of something as large scale as this, where the historic chapel is, but the types of like reflectivity and iridescent quality that these three artworks are providing could work really well thematically with that kind of redemption, reconciliation, reflective experience that the chapel could really start to communicate to people. And knowing that, you know, there's a history of this site, that the chapel was selected to remain on the site for really specific reasons, and that we're looking towards like a new future within this place and within Utah. This type of thematic tone to these pieces could be really appropriate. And then along this entire trail system, I think just like the river to range, we can be thinking about smaller scale opportunities dotted along these spaces that are pulling people to and from either the central green or from the river to range to the chapel. There's also some additional opportunities that we made sure to highlight as part of the plan. So whether it's like things that are well incorporated within transit and trails, as I've mentioned a couple of times, things that are architecturally integrated, they might be acting as screening for parking garages or some other things like utilities that you guys don't really want people to see. These are great kind of tactical opportunities for public art to play a great role within this environment. There's also the ability for these funds to be spent on murals. And so I mentioned that a little bit with the promenade, but just understand that a mural program is captured within the policy to have a specific process for being completed. And then also interior artwork. So we talked a little bit about Convergence Hall. I think there's also potentially the opportunity for something really interesting in terms of like an interior artwork in spaces that are going to get a lot of public traffic, and they're going to be like as part of this a public partnership. So we included some definitions for what these things might be in the plan as well. And last thing I just want to cover quickly is program management. So as I mentioned, your policy, the great thing about it, even as like the funding conversations are still happening today, is that really best practices, we try to think through them as thoroughly as possible to make sure, regardless of how that stream actually came in, we could be good stewards of those funds. And so we've established a definition for what public art really is, because it is a specific thing, and we do want to fund it in a specific way and through the lens that we are creating public art with these funds. So chartering the public art program will help you guys establish an organizational structure, create best practices for collection management now and in the future. It will outline how these funding sources really work and operate, and describe the specific process for acquiring and procuring public art through your program. Another thing that we've allowed within this policy that we think would be really great, especially really great for local artists and great on you guys when it comes to staff time and resources, is launching a pre-qualification program. Some other cities that have some fairly sizable public art programs do something similar. And so you can open that portal on an annual basis or every other year, as we've kind of recommended within this policy, and allow a share of local artists, national artists, and international artists to apply just broadly through their qualifications. And then you can work to match projects to the artists that you have on your qualifications list and not have to constantly be screening applicants. And so that's one way that we've kind of thought through how this can work from a staff and advising board standpoint. And then as Don had kind of mentioned, what might that Arts Council partnership look like? So a public art advisory board can be established within your public art policy, and that might include membership of local arts administrators and leaders such as local arts council representation. It also allows for developer representation, architects, landscape architects, local artists, community members who are broadly interested in working to select and advise how this public art program really happens to participate in that process. We also provided some language for how this would be staffed, and it identified a public art coordinator. When we say public art coordinator, that's an identified person. So we know that staffing capacity and the ability to have a staff member might change either year over year, or it might be something that makes more sense down the line. But we did identify whoever that identified role might be, whether someone internal to your existing team or a consultant or someone who's brought on later, what that person would be responsible for, how they would help with this program, how they would act as the liaison with the Public Art Advisory Board, all of those things within the policy. So that said, I would love to open it up for questions. I know you might have a few, so.
Thank you, Jasmine. That was a great presentation. It looks like Mayor Ramsey has a question. Go ahead.
It's not a question, just a comment. And actually, it's just never turned off. I didn't ever push this again, but since it's on, I'm going to take the opportunity to say, Jasmine, that was such a great presentation. That was really well done. And how grateful I am that we are starting out this project with an arts master plan. It's a big deal, and it's not common. It's something that doesn't always that comes along later and almost retrofit. And now we have the bandwidth to think about the art that we want. It's great to be leading with this as part of the initial plan. It's going to result in better outcomes. But I think the ideas, the proposals, the governance structure, how to go about it, I just really think that was very well done. Our city we did a full arts master plan last year that we approved. It's a big project. Everything that Jasmine just presented is big, but it is going to benefit this project. It'll benefit this development. And I just think it's well done. I don't have questions or concerns. I think it's well done. And however we decide to put this organization, the board together, I agree with what Jasmine said. Let's bring all the right folks together to help oversee this. It's going to be good. I'm excited about it.
Thank you, Mayor. Other discussion from the board? I am not seeing any. Jasmine, you're off the hook. Thank you again for this great presentation. We look forward to kind of moving forward with this, and I'm sure we'll have more discussions as we move on. So thanks again for all the great work that you and your team have done.
Thank you all.
All right, well, that moves us on to the 8th item on our agenda, the Advanced Air Mobility Study Update. So as you'll recall, in August 2024, following again another competitive and transparent RFE selection process, the authority awarded its Advanced Air Mobility Feasibility Study contract to the NEXA, I think that's how you would say it, right? NEXA Capital Advisors. And this study included 2 major studies. First, it was supposed to look at a utilization demand study, but then also a Veriport technical feasibility study. We expect air mobility to play a central role in getting folks to and from the point in the future. And so we're planning now for these new technologies. So we've asked Nexa Capital Advisors to provide an update to the board on their progress in the study. I'd like to invite now to Linda Larson, the project lead from Nexa Advisors, to present. I'll go ahead. It looks like your mic is on, and we're ready to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think Nexa thanks the Land Authority Board and the staff for this exciting project. And as you were pointing out, it's so great to start in the planning process and not have to retrofit and think about how we adapt to a new technology that's evolving. We're building it from the start. And a special shout out to Steve Kellerberg, because he's really worked very closely with the Nexa team. The Nexa team is also online here if we have any additional questions. I thought I'd start with helping to explain, I think we're all on the same page, which is bring us all to the same page on what is advanced air mobility. It's a term we throw around that we all know in the industry, but it's not one that's a common term. So advanced air mobility is a new concept of air transportation that uses quiet electric aircraft. They can either be a vertical takeoff or electric vertical VTOL takeoff and landing aircraft, or they can also be more traditional short takeoff and landing aircraft. And then additionally, they can be drones. The big difference with these aircraft versus the other aircraft that we are so familiar with in conventional and commercial aviation is that these aircraft will operate at low altitudes within cities and between cities on regional air mobility. So we're talking about operating at the 5,000 and less foot. So they're a quick flight to and from destinations. And you may have also all seen in the press that Beta brought aircraft to Utah based on this joint memorandum that was entered into with 47G, UDOT, and the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. And they came to the state with 5-city demonstration. And actually the Nexa team is headed next week out to Vermont, which is where this aircraft will be developed. And we also are including in that meeting a discussion of what it would take for an operator, since Beta is talking about being an aircraft operator, to come to Utah. So what are the use cases for this new technology? First is we looked at the airport shuttle going to and from other airports. You know, if we're in the Point, we can go to Provo, we can just go to Salt Lake City Airport quite easily for connection. Looking at regional air mobility, which brings in new flights from places like Price, Utah is super excited about this idea of being able to feed into the Point and into the advanced air mobility network. Business aviation connecting corporate headquarters to airports and other locations, medical flights, sightseeing and tourism is a very big use that we can bring these new, quieter, efficient, environmentally friendly, safe aircraft to take advantage of all of our many benefits we have here in the state for state and national parks. And then eventually we'll see on-demand air taxi service like we have with Uber services. Right now we have in the state cargo and package delivery for both medical and other types of cargo or small packages, but eventually we will see that these larger autonomous aircraft will be used for cargo. Those are the use cases. And where do they land? How are these aircraft different than other aircraft? So advanced air mobility aircraft use vertiports. That's the terminology. There are several types of vertiports. One is a heliport where the facilities are added to accommodate advanced air mobility, such as parking the aircraft and also charging. And then there are vertiports that are limited, like the little pad there. Then we have new totally developed vertiports specifically for these aircraft. And then we have airports that are using multiple transportation. So our understanding, I think you did a great job of explaining it, is that our mission is to incorporate a vertiport into the planning for the Point. And you can see how we looked at some of the destinations. It'll elevate the appeal to companies to move to the Point because it is leading edge. It makes us very different. It can become a focal point of the 2034 Olympics. Also, we are now, as was noted, we started in August, that we're about halfway through. Some of the use cases that I talked generally. I also included the state study that Nexa just finished for UDOT, was released in March, which we were able to do 65 interviews and all this economic analysis of the economic benefits and feasibility for the state of Utah for a statewide plan. Looking at some of them specific for the point, we're looking at advanced airport shuttles, Olympic venues, and colleges and universities. But we looked specifically at 6 sites within the business cases that we were developed. The first one is located near the Front Runner Station, and we would see that that would be a field that would start as a green field, and then we could later move it to a rooftop installation. Number 2 is a vertiport that would be on top of a building, on top of a parking garage that's connected to an office building. 3 is on Convergence Hall, but we have since learned that that really isn't feasible with the design of Convergence Hall with the 4 buildings, and it's all glass, and there's going to be housing in there, that it doesn't really look like that's a viable alternative. And then 1 in a green field site in the Range District, and then another parking deck, and then finally on the ground up there in the North River District. So what we've done for each of these sites, we really looked first at site 1 is did a business case analysis where we would start, you see that little vertistop, maybe it doesn't even have charging at first, and they charge at Provo, come in, stop, and go back out. And eventually we could transition over to a parking garage. We've developed financials for this site 1, where we are seeing that we would start in 2028, build it out, start the operations in 2028, and then transition to a rooftop, a more complete, a fuller service vertiport by 2037. But the whole time we forecast that this is a profitable net revenue for the point, for the operator. And when we define an operator, there's 2 operators. 1 is the operator of the aircraft, and the second is the operator of the vertiport. So we see very strong financial performance by having this vertiport within the point. Our next step is to look at the airspace and look at our obstacles and the other area that's influencing where we put the vertiport within the point. And that's my presentation. I'm open to questions.
Thank you for that presentation. We'll go to the board now for questions. We'll start with Senator Stevenson.
Thank you. Last legislative session, we put together some legislation for a spaceport, which at least a look at it. I'm not sure there isn't some coordination or some things that could happen here. We also have an organization in the state that has looked at and actually, I noticed we have a brochure here for Beta that they've brought some things, or that there's a lot of actually a lot of things for these planes or these air implements that are being produced here in Utah. And anyway, my question is would it pay for us to try and investigate probably a little cooperation, and maybe 47G would be, maybe you're already working with them. I don't know, but it seems to me that there would be, would make some sense for us all to kind of be working down the same track on this. There was quite a presentation made during the legislative session to the governor on the vertiport and the process that we would go through there. So I would just hope that we could kind of get together on this, and possibly we need to take a look at the spaceport process and maybe put someone from your organization on that board where we'd have some input. It's in its infancy right now, but it looks like there may be some areas that this could kind of grow together. Maybe we should take a look at that. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're working with 47G and the Project Alta. And how I talk about the difference of the different organization is we're thankful as a state to have Project Alta to beat the drum, to get out there, to get Beta to come in, to start doing these MOUs. Now what they're doing with UDOT is organizing there's about 6 companies that have stepped up to say they're going to be vertiport developers. So now they're organizing, like with the operator of the aircraft, with the vertiport developers. So the study that we did, that Nexa did for the UDOT is more tactical, as this is a tactical study. This is implementation of the vision that 47G, Chris Metz and Aaron Stocks have outlaid for advanced air mobility in the state. We're going hand in hand with this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Walker.
So when I was 16, I caught this sickness called aviation, and I learned to fly when I was 16. My father taught me. And I've been flying for a long time, and I fly in our airspace a fair amount. We have what's called Class B airspace in the Salt Lake Valley. It's the most controlled airspace that there is. If you look at it, it's like an upside down wedding cake. The top of the wedding cake is surfaced to 10,000, and then it goes out. Our Class B airspace extends to the northern part of Utah Lake and all the way up past, near Bountiful. The B airspace is controlled, so you have to have a clearance to fly into this airspace with a specific type of transponder that they didn't have turned on at the Reagan National Midair. But everybody that flies in this has to have this transponder. I think this sounds awesome, but this is tight and congested airspace now. Provo's looking to move their airspace up to a likely more controlled than it is now. But I guess one of the big hurdles, I'm sure you know this, is going to be figuring out this airspace, especially to get from Salt Lake out to the point. I mean, I'm certain it can be done, but it's definitely a federal hurdle that I don't know what it will look like, but it's something to consider. It's not just free flying in this area. Now, if you're above 10,000 feet, you can fly over it. But if you're inside the 10 to the surface, it's busy. It's busy airspace in here. But just a point to make out, I was just thinking about it when I was sitting here, looking at my map that I use when I fly and reminding myself of how tight it is. But hopefully you're working on that first.
I also am a pilot, and I'm a drone pilot, and very sensitive. As I said, our next step is to really do a detailed airspace analysis. We also have the issue of those hang gliders that come off the mountain. That's a big issue. But these are issues that we're not alone in facing in the United States. And we're, again, fortunate from the leadership of our UDOT, where they were part of one of 8 states that originally came together for what's known as the multi-state collaborative. We now have 36 states, where states are starting to take over the management of the air traffic for this kind of an operation and negotiating with FAA to find the path forward. And you're absolutely right. We're a little bit fortunate because of the location of the point. We're just outside the wedding cake.
Yeah, just out, but then you're boxed into the restricted airspace for
Yeah.
Camp Williams right to the left. But I mean, I'm hopeful it could be done, but it's definitely going to take some planning, because are these piloted aircraft or are they autonomous aircraft?
Initially, they're piloted aircraft. Our forecast for UDOT goes out to 2045, and the big economic gains are when you take the pilot out of the cockpit, but that's not well until like 2040 timeframe.
Pilots turn off ADS-B signals. Maybe the drones won't. I don't know.
But it definitely looking at the initiative to have the Olympics have a advanced air mobility demonstration. I mean, that's the governor is committed to having that for 2034. So is the Los Angeles Olympics for 2028, but they're going to be more of a demonstration. I really believe, assuming that we're able to get these aircraft certificated. Originally, it looked like we would get some of these aircraft like Beta certificated this year, but with all the changes at the FAA, it's probably been pushed out a couple of years.
Is the operational altitude 1,000 feet, or is it below 1,000 feet?
It's above 1,000 feet.
So between 1,000 and 2,000 or somewhere in there?
5,000, yeah.
Okay.
The drone deliveries are less than 1,000. You know, we had Zipline, as you well know, at Daybreak with an amazing experiment to have intermountain deliveries for high valued critical medications, and it was a great demonstration. And that was all like about 800 feet. So I look forward to coming back again with our update once we have the, exactly what you're saying, the airspace analysis done. But I have to also say that in talking to the TPP, they're kind of inclined to go with our site number 2, which is more in the hub on the parking garage, because that may be developed faster than site 1, which is at the train station. And also it gives them a bigger selling point to say to proposed tenants that, hey, we're leading the edge, we're planning for this.
No, that's helpful. Co-Chair Snow.
The point is the point's actually outside the B airspace, which
Yes,
is
that's right.
interesting and unique, and you could certainly go up the east side, but getting in and out of it'll be, but yeah, it's
Yeah, we're
awesome.
outside the wedding cake.
Sorry, Co-Chair Snow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to Linda, thank you for that presentation, and thank you for continuing to work with the point. I had some of the same questions that Mayor Walker had, but I'm not a pilot, and so he asked them in a much more technical and a better way. And the fact that you're also a pilot is good. My question is, with this becoming more, I suppose, recognized advanced mobility and this trend moving forward, none of this or all of this will come under the supervision of FAA. And I guess what I'm wanting to know is that, have we done enough at the point to get our foot in the door, so to speak, to keep us on the map, and also make sure that as we allocate and talk about this mode of transportation, that we are not, that we don't end up not being a player. Does that make sense?
Oh, it
We
definitely
want to
makes
know that
sense.
we've done the kind of things that need to be done so that we preserve our position. So could you respond to that?
That definitely makes sense, because when Nexa has reached out to some of the vertiport developers, the big one is Skyports, they're not interested in Utah because they're so focused on developing the 34th Street vertiport for New York City that they don't have bandwidth to think about a state like Utah. It has to be done as a system of vertiports. And by working with Project Alta, which we are working with Project Alta, that's the way that we get recognized as a state on a national level.
Okay. And you're assisting us with that. And when I say us, the Point Project, to make sure that we are players at the table. Is that a good way to say it?
I don't know how much authority, I don't have authority, but I'm making sure that all of the potential stakeholders, both FAA, as I said, we're going to see Beta next week, and working with vertiports. There is a vertiport called Urban 5 who's very interested. So yes, we are advocating on behalf of the Point in the stakeholders in this industry.
Well, we appreciate that. And I just want you to know that your work on behalf of the Point is appreciated, and so that we stay in the game, so to speak. We don't want this to bypass us because it's something that we talk about, and we don't want to wake up one morning and find out that it's no longer feasible because the plans bypassed us. The other question I have is, do you know of any market right now in the United States where there is actually operational this mode of air travel is actually being operated right now, of course, with a pilot, these small craft in a commercial operation?
That goes back to FAA certification of the vehicles. We thought we would get Beta and a couple of others certified this year, but now with all the changes with the FAA, staffing, it's been postponed. So the answer to that is no, and it can't be. The closest that we have are helicopter operators. And Nexa has worked with a company called Helijet out of Vancouver. Helijet has made the decision they have orders for eVTOL aircraft, and they are right now in the process of retrofitting their Vancouver helipad to be able to accommodate with charging the eVTOLs. But everybody, Delta has orders with the Joby aircraft, and United has orders with eVTOL aircraft. But we're all waiting for that pole in the tent called FAA to certify the aircraft for commercial operations.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you again for your reports here and for advising us on how this applies to this important project. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you, Co-Chair Snow, and we'll echo his comments. We really appreciate the great work. I don't see any of the comments or discussion from the board here, but thank you, Dr. Larson, for this report. And we look forward to having you back in 6 months or so to give another update. And hopefully by then the FAA's gotten things into gear a little bit, or at least we have a roadmap for when we can start moving forward. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll move now to the 9th item on our agenda, the director's report. I think we all share the feeling that since we've had Director Ambray as our executive director, we've been impressed by his management, his precision, and urgency in moving this project forward. We are moving at a rapid pace, and so we want to give him some time to provide the board with an update on the project from his perspective. We also have asked for a recap of the legislative session, and I think he's going to turn some time to Senator Stevenson for that. But Director Ambray, will you please give us an update?
Sure. Thank you for the time, Co-Chair Tusher. So as you recall, it's been 3 or 4 board meetings since I've had an opportunity to really kind of dive in and give you guys an overview of everything. We've been, as you all know, hyper focused on getting this entertainment venue in PID 1 off the ground. So let me start with the critical backbone infrastructure and the current work the progress going on. All of the infrastructure on site itself, on the 600-acre site, has been bid out and is currently under work. So those are all the roads, water lines, electrical, sewer, storm drain, all of that. And then the following work packages that remain to be bid are the water tank and transmission lines, the bridge structure over Porter Rockwell Boulevard, and river to range improvements and road landscaping. The project schedule, DFCM has initiated the solicitation process for the water tank and transmission lines to develop a short list of qualified contractors. The bridge structure package is scheduled to go out to bid later this summer. And once we procure those packages, we'll really have a very good understanding of our budget and understand what, how we have to scope river to range and the street landscaping package moving forward. I'm also working in negotiations to, the acquisition for the right of way. It's ongoing. We're getting closer and closer. We're just refining some legal descriptions and some easement details. The stormwater outfall, it came in at about 4.5 million. If you recall, this was never part of the $165 million infrastructure package. This was an unknown that came in late in the game when we started developing the engineering further and understood the need for this outfall. We tried to partner with Bluffdale in a cost sharing opportunity. We still came in significantly over budget, and it's unfortunate because this is a critical piece for us to move forward. Currently, I believe the bids are around $8.5 million. If we don't absolutely need it for phase 1, but it does create some significant challenges. Out there, as you'll know, it's very clay-like material. And so when you have a retention basin, you're relying on evaporation, and that can take a while when it doesn't percolate through the clay. So, we may need to strategize as a board to how we can fund this. And I don't know if we tap into that one-time allocation of $10 million. This also is a giant challenge in our progression of negotiations with Draper because it goes outside of their stormwater standards. They don't allow retainage basins. They only allow detention basins, which if we put the outfall in, that would check that box. So again, this is a significant challenge that we're trying to figure out. Other issues that we're working on are, you guys know, the sub-campus entertainment venue. We have ongoing coordination, reviewing key legal documents, including the pledge agreement, the public infrastructure district governing documents, and the sub-campus disposition and development agreement and associated design guidelines. And then also, as you know, we are continuing progress on negotiations with the interlocal agreement with Draper City. Do you have any questions? Yeah.
Mayor Ramsey.
Do you have any proposals on to bring to the board, or could you put together a proposal to bring to the board on what you said we need to really strategize about, and that's coming up with the funding to turn a retention basin into a detention basin?
Absolutely. So I have a meeting, I believe next Tuesday with Bluffdale City. After I get past that meeting, I'll certainly sit down with my engineering staff, Bluffdale, and try to strategize about the best pathway forward. Unfortunately, I think we're at a point where we either kind of pull the trigger on moving forward with the current design, which has been bid, and it's about $8.5 million. Our share, that would be give or take $5 million. And so that would be a significant hit to our $10 million one-time allocation. But it solves some problems, and it's probably the best thing long-term. But yes, I would be glad to put together a proposal.
Well, hearing you say that it solves some problems and it solves problems upfront makes phase one easier to put in better outcomes and is more of a best practice. That I lean that direction. That's the direction that I lean supporting that. So.
Yeah, I've taken a considerable amount of time on how we make this work, and my fear is that we put a retention basin in and the water gets stagnant, sits there, and creates more of a problem, right? With mosquitoes and residents right across the tracks. And yeah, I agree with your last statement.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Stevenson.
A project of this size and over this time period, this is my opinion, but I don't believe that the state of Utah is going to be able to get off with with a one-time $10 million allocation. I really believe the state is going to have to step up, and there may be a time or two that we have to put additions into this, especially under the current economic climate of inflation, the current economic climate of there are some unknowns out there, but I think the state, where it is state property, the state has been very instrumental in what goes on. They are going to have to participate. Now, we probably need to get a plan put together on how we go about that and how we ask for additional funding. But I think that looks to me like the only way we're going to do this. But I think it's much more important that we do this right, and we've done it right to date. And if we get down to the point that 5 million or 10 million or 20 million is the difference between doing this in the right way and doing it wrong, or putting a stress on the project that we shouldn't have, I really believe the state should get involved. And so we'll see what we can do about putting that forward. Representative Tusher is really good at this. So.
I couldn't agree more with you, Senator.
Hang on, Mayor.
I know that there's 3, one former mayor and 2 current mayors, and probably a county mayor online that we all have our reasons why we don't like retention basins. There's a lot of good reasons why. So, and I think that clay is so well done that I don't think it ever percolates 1 millimeter in. I think it will be a lake unless it evaporates. And certainly that would be ugly, and all the other issues, mosquitoes and everything else that could go along with it. Plus, I think a chunk of that is our park to be, which people want a park. They won't want a lake unless we can put fish in it. Maybe that works. I don't know.
I think mosquitoes in it, possibly, that I've heard propositions to where that this mosquito could be the state bird. So we could maybe
Well,
You wouldn't
move in
even
that
have to plant
direction.
the mosquitoes. They would just be there.
There are years when they're thick, and that will make it, that would be, I think it'd be, I agree with what you said, and I'm willing to advocate for, we probably need a little more state appropriation to do it right, because it does need to be, because there's no way anybody building this wants to leave it like that. It won't sell the project, that's for sure. In fact, people will be like, why? That'll be the question.
I think we want this done in a very expedient manner. We want it done properly. And, but we don't want it so thrifty that it's, we cut the legs out from under it. So
Mike, does that storm wall outfall, does that part and parcel with where the trail connection would ultimately go as well? Is that a project that if it
Yeah.
were to get done, would take care of the two birds with that?
That's correct. That River to Range Trail connects to the community park.
Okay.
And yes, ultimately, the community park is partially, it's 30% a retention basin. It would be a detention basin, which would then allow it to be dry, and still played on.
You
and
can play
used.
soccer in those.
Right.
I have one of those in my neighborhood.
Water
Literally one
polo.
of those in my neighborhood. There's a great playground. It's a park. It's a
Right.
detention basin.
Correct.
And only once has it filled up with 8 feet of water that took quite some time to, it was during the generational storm that we had, and it filled all the way up, but it still didn't take that long to drain out and to get cleaned out. And so if the difference is between this and that, yes,
Oh.
I think
In that same storm,
get
I
this
had
right. We have
3
to
of
do it
our
right.
detention basins that filled up and went over one of them went over the edge. I mean, they can be, the detention, they drain, but that trail connection is key too. And if that's all part of
Yeah.
that same, I mean, we just can't leave that not connected to the Jordan River. We got to figure that out too, if we're going to do it there.
Yeah, I agree. And I might just mention one more thing. Sorry. I'll mention one more thing, and that is, I appreciate Senator Stevenson for bringing up the fact that maybe we just need another, bump of money to really make this work. Another thing that's come up is secondary water and the seasonal. What do you do in the seasonal, shoulders, I should say. There's recently become an opportunity to probably purchase additional water rights from Clyde companies. And so, and again, we don't have the cash to do that right now, but if we need it for the overall 600-acre plan. And so if that's a possibility, we might want to consider that as well moving forward.
yeah, there are sources I think we can tap into for water that would make some sense that may not include a state allocation. It just we just may need to work with someone that's maybe in some of the other departments
Okay.
and find that.
I'd be really supportive of exploring that, knowing the hard line of how much water there is available from Jordan Valley Water and that there isn't.
Yeah.
And we know that the 1.35 acre feet is not going to serve all of the needs, and that is what there is. If there's an opportunity to explore and to potentially obtain additional water shares, I'd be very open to exploring that. I think we need to.
I agree.
We got an under freeway secondary water connection. At least it's over there.
Yes. And
I mean-
that's all we have for irrigation purposes right now.
Yeah, we did that a few years ago in anticipation of making sure there was some, but
That's 1.35 per acre or per acre on the 700 acres.
But if we water-wise landscape the place, instead of all the pictures we have of grass on the top of every building, if we go to the water-wise landscaping, we could probably do a fairly good job with that irrigation water alone.
If we don't, we have to pay more expensive price for our water anyway. So the Waterwise Landscaping is going to give us the better pricing anyway.
Yeah, and I think there's obviously, you guys know this, if you can be very strategic and create that balance, right? Where maybe the promenade area, it's a little bit different feel, but then the river to range in some other areas, we absolutely
gotta be
need to be
natural.
water-wise. Yeah.
That's gotta be natural.
I'm not worried we won't get this right. I do think Daybreak's been a very good example of making this work and getting it right. I know that it is. And yeah, I don't worry that we'll get this right.
Yeah.
But if we could come up with any money to help explore getting some of those water shares from Clyde Company, if that's, yeah, I'd love to pursue that as best we can.
Great.
If we can help in that, we might be, I'd be willing to talk about that as well. On the trail connection, I chair the Active Transportation Committee on Wasatch Front, and that trail segment is funded from, the only thing that isn't funded is the connection over the railroad track. My question is that, am I in the right location where the outfall would be? Is it the same?
You are, but we're only constructing about half of the river to range in phase one.
Okay.
So the connection that would lead all the way east to I-15 and then over the freeway won't be constructed now. And then the portion that connects west of Porter Rockwell Boulevard down to where exactly you're talking about won't be constructed now. That's a future phase.
From our side, but they funded the side across, I mean, at least that's how it was presented yesterday, that trail had that part of that $95 million trail funding. That segment's funded. They're just waiting for Bluffdale to fund the bridge, which they represented yesterday was like a year away. So, I mean, if that gets put in, that would be fantastic, because we could easily.
We'll build it.
Okay.
Senator, did you have something else? I just saw your hand.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I was scratching.
Gotcha. I don't see any other comment. This has been a great review. Did you have an update on the legislative session that you wanted Senator Stevenson to do?
I'll run through this really quick. We've, the bill consisted of quite a few parts, and it consisted of really two bills, because there was the alcohol piece that was in the alcohol bill. I'll go over that very quickly, but I've ran a land Point in the Mountain bill ever since that we put it together. We put the original Point in the Mountain bill together to create the authority, and then we've ran additional to help make this work and bring it together. And my guess is that will happen over the next few years. That will need to be, we will need to continue to make tweaks that will cause additional legislation to be put in place. And I think as far as the alcohol piece, that's an ongoing thing as long as Utah has the current alcohol laws it has, where we have a centralized distribution point and the type of, we are considered a control state. The first thing that the bill did was it created an option for us to buy additional land around the point. There are pieces that may come in because of geography or utility connections or whatever it may be, that they would need to be purchased and brought into the Point in the Mountain Authority. And the bill creates the option for that. And it also creates the option of, once that comes in, it's automatically a point of the mountain, or a point land, and it's not considered elsewhere or not included in other entities. So the other thing is it clarified the privilege tax. We don't have a property tax because it's state property. We have a privilege tax. It creates a process to where that is equal to the property tax. It's administered the same, it's distributed the same. It's just called a privilege tax rather than a property tax. And that's, to dive into that much more just creates confusion, but that makes it easy. You're getting basically the same presentation that I made on the Senate floor. And this slipped right through and went quickly. We had very few questions, and not that wasn't the way the alcohol bill went through, but that's the way that the point bill went through. The other thing that we changed is we changed the board composition, which we all understand, and we did that because we've done this with other land use authorities in the state of Utah. I've been involved with those. I think I ran my 16th piece of MIDA legislation this year. And I've been in the this was my 16th session. So it's ongoing, but hopefully we're learning from the other authorities that we can get by with less legislation, and we correct a lot of the issues that we have as we approach each one of these. And yet they're all very different. So we have now have a much slimmer board, and but the board is able to make decisions more quickly, and we'll be able to make corrections and move forward as the challenges of development come to us. So the board consists of 3 members appointed by the governor, 1 by the Senate, 1 by the House, and then we will have the mayor or appointee from Draper, mayor of Salt Lake County, or appointee from the county. Reason being, this property falls inside of those entities, and it affects their communities, and they also the taxing entity that we work with. The other thing that it does is that the bill corrected the publication. For some reason, we left ourselves outside of a proper way of making public notice. It all used to be through a newspaper, and we left ourselves in that for some reason, and it didn't seem to make sense. We should be able to use electronic method of publication or notifying. The other thing is the recording of plats. It all has to be done with Salt Lake City. We wanted that clarified, or Salt Lake County, excuse me. And wanted to make sure that they're, so that it's handled as any other land transaction in the state or in the county. Also, let's see, the recording of plats, and then the immediate, just had an immediate effective date that took place as soon as the governor signed the legislation. The alcohol piece, we've actually created, it's a very narrow. There are only 2 in the state of Utah. It's the area west of the mall downtown, or that the Delta Center fits into. There are 4 blocks there that create a area where it's entirely different than other alcohol process, and it allows for it covers what we call proximity issues, which means how close can you be to the sidewalk? How close can you be to to a park? And this took care of the river to range process, created a lot of less than optimistic feelings by a lot of people but we thought that this would be a great process when we looked at the part west of the mall downtown, west of West Temple, because it would allow other areas to open up that had one of these in an entertainment district. And that's the process we will have on the river to range, and that will be under the recommendation to the Alcohol Commission by the city of Draper. And that's really what the legislation did. The alcohol piece was probably about as difficult and controversial legislation as we ran in quite a while. And but the other part, I think we have a lot of good partners in the state, in the legislature, that are willing to help this become a very profitable and iconic project for the state of Utah. So we have a winner here. I think we're attached to, and we're going to make this work. And we, like I say, everyone, I think this passed both houses. I don't know that we got a negative vote in the House. 2, that would be interesting. I may have to really think to figure out who those 2 were, but in the Senate, I think we passed unanimously. Maybe we had 1 negative. We have 1 individual in the Senate that thinks that if it has the word land use authority attached to it, that, or any authority attached to it, that it's a government funded welfare project, and they don't understand the concept of it. My goal for the next several months is to see if I can come up with a convert out of the Senate process so that these votes are unanimous. It's just really interesting to see how people formulate what they really want to do with these things. But they are, I have a prediction, right now, the #1 economic development unit, job creator in the state of Utah is MIDA. #2 is the inland port. Number three, within 2 years will be the point. And a few years after that, you will see the ballpark district or the Fair Park district will fall into number four. But it's because of the ability that we have to create infrastructure and make decisions quickly. We don't have to go through a long drawn out process or a bureaucratic process. So that's the reason we're here. And that's the reason we will get the very best of what our country and maybe the world has to offer with who moves into this project, why they're there. And anyway, we've got a winner here, and we're all, I think, dedicated to make that continue to happen. Absolute pleasure to serve with you. And it's been a pleasure to serve with the previous board and watch this grow and develop. And the point of the spear is refined. I don't think it will get much sharper than it is now with a 7-member board. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Well said. Well said. Any questions about this update, members of the board? Anything you wanted to add, Director?
No, thanks. I'm good.
All right. Thank you for that update. That was great. Looking at our agenda, we do have on here an executive session. I don't think we have any need to go into a closed executive session, so we'll move forward. And that brings us to the end of our meeting. Our next board meeting will be May 14th, in person here in room 445 for everyone that may have missed that this morning. We look forward to seeing everyone next month, either in person or online. And with that, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn from Mayor Walker. A second to that?
I would be happy to second that.
Okay. Senator Stevenson is happy to second that. I'll call the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you.